Hello, IB Bio students. So today we're going to continue with 9.3 and we are going to look at apical growth. So if we look here at the essential understanding, it says that mitosis and cell division in the shoot apex provide cells needed for extension of the stem and development of leaves. So we're going to look at what happens at the shoot region of these cells of plants and how they help develop the plant and help the plant growth. So we saw last time where the apical meristem was located. So if you remember from last time, we said that apical meristems were responsible for primary growth. And we said that primary growth is more like the lengthening type of growth, and when the plant grows or stretches itself as it grows, as it lengthens, this is going to occur at the tips. And we have tips at the shoot and we have tips at the root. So right here, you're looking at the shoot apical meristem. This is a micrograph of this region right here. And here you're looking at the root apical meristem, or that region right there. Okay. So notice that they look different, right? The root versus the shoot. The shoot kind of reminds me of like the horns of this wild beast. And then the rest of the bud here is enclosed. So how does growth happen in these regions? Well, the cells can enlarge. So if you notice here, this cell looks a lot bigger than the cells here. So the cell can enlarge and grow as the cell accumulates more cytoplasm. But also the cell has the ability to undergo cell division or mitosis and divide. And that is also going to help in the lengthening process of the plant. Now, within the stem, within this region here, there's also these nodes, and these are these red circles here. And you also actually find them in the root, so they're not just in the stem, but they're also in the root. And these nodes, what they're going to do is that's where the primarily growth is going to occur. So the cell division that's taking place here in this plant is happening right here within these nodes. So within the node found within the apical meristem of the plant. Now, there are these other meristem tissue. So this whole thing is the meristem, right? So, but there's also these meristem tissue, and this is outlined right here in blue. And this is called the axillary buds or the axillary lateral buds. So these blue lines that you see here that I am outlining right now, these blue lines or these axillary lateral buds that arise from the meristem region, this is going to be meristem tissue that is going to give rise to new branches, and it's going to give rise to new leaves, and it's going to give rise to new flowers as well. Okay, so that means that the main node here found within the apical shoot of the meristem that is going to allow this plant to grow tall and lengthen. And then the axillary meristem or the axillary lateral buds is going to allow for the growing of new branches, growing of new leaves and flowers. But notice that all of this, right, is primary growth. Okay, everything that's happening here, these new branches, the new leaves, the lengthening here of the apical meristem, the lengthening of the root apical meristem, all of this is part of primary growth. Okay. Let's scroll down here. So what controls this growth? We know that plants, that plants have hormones and that these hormones control the growth in the shoot apex. And actually, they somewhat control it in the root as well. It's just that it happens differently, and we'll talk about that when we look at our next video of auxins. But let's focus right now on how these plant hormones are controlling growth in the shoot apex. And this is really interesting. So here you see the shoot apical meristem, or the shoot apex, right? And here we see a phenomenon known as apical dominance taking place. So remember that here you have this meristem tissue, here you have this node, and when these auxins are found in great abundance here, it promotes growth in the shoot apex. So then what happens here is that this plant is concerned about growing taller and taller and taller and taller. That's what we call apical dominance. So then what's happening to the rest of the plant? Well, it's still growing, right? But it's the side, or the branches and the leaves, they are not growing as fast as the tip. So the production of auxins additionally prevents growth in the lateral or the axillary buds that run down the shoot. And this is important for the survival of the plant, because remember that the plant is trying to grow as tall as it possibly can, and it's growing towards the light, because without light, without energy, it's not going to be able to undergo photosynthesis. So it's trying to outcompete other plants. So this plant here that's just growing is not really worried about forming lots of long branches and leaves. It's just worried about growing tall, right? Lengthening. So that's what we refer to as apical dominance. Now, as the plant grows taller and taller and taller, let's say now the plant is this tall, right? And the auxin accumulation is up here in the apical dominance. Well, now the distance where the auxin is, which is up here, and the distance to, let's say, this part of the plant, now it's a greater distance. So now this section of the plant is going to start growing more. So you're going to start seeing that perhaps in this section there's going to be, or in the lower sections, right, the lower part of the plant, you're going to start seeing more branches and more flowers. So as the distance between the terminal bud up here and the axillary bud increases, the inhibition of the axillary bud by auxin diminishes. Okay? So if you are trying to counterbalance this apical dominance, let's say you're into gardening, right? And you don't want your plant to be just tall and skinny and with very little branches and leaves. You want it to be bushy. So what do? You do something called pruning, or you do an apical bud decapitation. That sounds very violent. But what you do is you cut off the apical meristem or the apical bud, and this is where you have the accumulation of auxins. So what is that going to do? That is going to allow for the other lateral axillary meristem tissue to allow the plant to grow more branches and more leaves. So you probably already know about pruning, right, and how you need to prune your plants to allow them to grow bushier and more branches and more leaves. Okay, so you are stopping that apical dominant of just trying to grow tall, long, and slender towards the light.